Hello. I have had so many issues this morning trying to get everything to work. My second monitor decided it didn't want to work, and I spent like 10-15 minutes trying to even figure that out. And then I can't pin my trigger warnings in the chat. It's just not letting me do that at all. It's whatever. We're just gonna ignore these problems. But I should make sure the stream's actually working right before we do anything else. Let us see. I mean, I can hear. Yeah, I can hear, and it looks like it's all nice and crispy. I can see it nicely. So, no other issues, I think. But get off. How has everyone been? Besides the issues this morning, I've been alright. I don't think anything's really happened. Oh, no, I went and saw the Barbie movie a few days ago, and that was actually really good. But otherwise, I haven't done anything. Oh, poppity pop pops. But I guess we'll just jump right in because I don't have anything else to say before we start. Okay, looks like everything's still working. So continue. Yes. Okay, so it looks like we still have some mail for Lee and Jimmy. And then we still have Carlos and Shing to do. So we'll do Carlos first. Hong Kong was different than what I imagined. Back home in Mexico, everything was so colorful, but Hong Kong was just gray. Gray streets, gray buildings, gray store signs, and gray homeless people. And there was me sitting in the middle of them looking odd. I never knew that pesos couldn't be exchanged into Hong Kong dollars here. Does Hong Kong use dollars? When I woke up, I found a few more coins by my feet. I had to take them. I must survive. None of the homeless people seemed to like me very much, perhaps because they could only get about half as many coins as I. I had a big sister named Alicia. She was 9 years older than me. We both grew up in an orphanage in Monte Toloca. It was a rural place. You had to travel 4 kilometers to get to the nearest town. Costapec, just to make a phone call. I couldn't remember anything about my own parents. My big sister was the only person I had in this world. 9 years ago, Alicia had left Mexico to go to make more money. She used to write me letters every few months. Every time the mailman came, I would be so excited to see if there was an envelope with my name on it. Even though I couldn't read much, Auntie Benetta would always read them to me. Alicia didn't seem to have the easiest time, but she had seen so much of the outside world, and by reading her letters, I felt like I got to see what Alicia had seen as well. I could almost feel like I was right there with her in the big, new, interesting, and fascinating world that we have never seen before. However, we had stopped hearing from her about a year ago. Her last letter had come from Hong Kong, so I had asked Uncle Depp to find a tutor for me so he could teach me how to read and speak a little of the local language. I had to work so hard to make more money for the trip. I had done all this just so I could come to Hong Kong, even though I wasn't sure if she was still here in the city. Still, even if there was just the tiniest hope, I would never give up. I knew I had to find my sister and make sure she was okay. I had arrived at Pete Street. Pete Street had been on the postmark of Alicia's latest letter. Maybe someone nearby might have seen her. Before I left, Auntie Bentia had given me an old cell phone. I pulled up a picture of Alicia on the phone. I held up the phone asking people door to door to see if they had seen my sister. I couldn't tell if they simply didn't understand me. They would wave their hands at me every time before I had barely spoken. Almost halfway through the street, I found myself behind a large crowd of people. Thick dark smoke was coming out of the building nearby. People were shoving and running out of it. More and more people started to gather on the street. Many of them were taking pictures with their phones. The fire truck finally arrived. My cell phone suddenly rang. My cell phone fell to the ground. My cell phone was vibrating on the ground. Then it fell through the storm drain. No, the sewer water was flowing rapidly in the drain. I held on to the drain and tried my best to look down. Maybe the phone was stuck somewhere. I looked for a long time and even tried to reach in with my hand, but I couldn't get it. I was so tired, disappointed, and desperate I couldn't pretend anymore. I fell to the ground, feeling like that cell phone was the most valuable thing I had. It was the only picture of my sister on it. It had the only picture of my sister on it. Lord, please help me. I really didn't know if I could ever find my big sister without it. Carlos. The official wing of Criminal Investigation Unit 4 looked like a small warehouse that hadn't been organized in forever. It was crowded and messy in the first place. Then almost every desk had stacks of files that were at least 20 centimeters tall, as well as some kind of evidence and other random items. As well as all kinds of evidence and other random items. I stood up straight and gave a salute. Cheng, reporting for duty at Unit 4. There were only 2 other people there besides me. One of them was wiping down his rifle. He looked at me with a strange, examining look on his face. The other one had dark circles around his eyes, which made him look like he hadn't slept for days. He was looking over some files. Judging from his seat, this must be the infamous lieutenant of Unit 4, King. Lieutenant King gave me a glance with a half-smoked cigarette in his mouth. Then he mumbled, "You, over there." I followed the directions of his look and saw the desk that he seemed to be referring to. Many old bags from McDonald's were stacked on top of it, all filled with leftovers and trash. It was also directly opposite the bathroom, facing it. It was okay as long as I had somewhere to sit. I was about to ask Lieutenant King what I should do next when the phone on his desk rang. He took the call, put down the phone, and announced to us that there was a gang-related hostage situation 2 blocks from the station. I never thought my opportunity to defend justice would arrive so soon. Lieutenant King put out his cigarette in an ashtray and stood up. I followed him. He grabbed his coat and said, "Hey, new guy, have you got your gun?" "My gun? No, not yet." "Then where do you think you're going? Stay by the phone, take notes if anything comes up, don't speak too much." I can still help without a gun. As a policeman, I swear to defend justice, to prevent all offenses against people and property. Justice. Lieutenant King burst into laughter before I could finish my sentence. "You think justice is going to block a bullet from hitting you? Well, kid, I've seen plenty of idiots like you in my unit. There's only one rule you need to remember at all time, which is to follow the orders." That wasn't what I meant at all. I was just trying to help. First day on the job, and I was already having such a misunderstanding with my lieutenant. But before I could explain myself, Lieutenant King continued, "If you have a problem with staying by the phones, you can just go home and don't bother coming back tomorrow either. I'll let the old man know." After they left, I sat down at my seat opposite the bathroom. As my nose was catching glimpses of the faint smell, I let out a deafened sigh. When I had been in the police academy, people would always have an understanding smile on their face whenever Unit 4 was brought up. Everyone had heard all sorts of rumors about this place. Lieutenant King was the infamous dictator of the Criminal Investigations Department. Everyone must follow his orders without question. He had a particular personality and he was extremely rough, even cruel with the criminals. Besides, Lieutenant King was a lot younger than the other unit's lieutenants. Therefore, many people speculated that Lieutenant King had only gotten his position because of nepotism. As a result, no rookie ever wanted to join Unit 4. As for the unit that everyone dreamed of getting into, that would have to be Unit 1. Unit 1 had over 30 officers, and it was widely considered the best unit of the department. Yet here I was, assigned to Unit 4. I was sulking when the phone rang again. There was another hostage case in Since no one in Unit 4 was available, I suppose this was my time to shine. I hurried to the scene in 10 minutes. It was a 10-story apartment building. I could vaguely see 2 people on the ledge of the rooftop. People told me they were a married couple. The husband had borrowed too much money from a loan shark and couldn't pay them back. That was why he wanted to jump off the building, and he had forced his wife up there with him. Well, let's see how I, Chang, would brilliantly solve this crisis. One of his feet was already on the edge of the ledge. He was holding a knife against the frightened wife's neck. I walked over there. Stop, I'm telling you to stop. He got riled up and his right foot missed the ledge. He fell over the edge and dragged his wife with him. Wait, no, before I even had a chance to take him down, both of them disappeared out of my sight. It was a horrible scene at the bottom of the building. Even though I was 10 floors above the ground, I felt like I could still smell the blood. It almost made me sick. I stood there in shock. For the first time, I finally recognized that what it felt like to be a real policeman. Oh God, what have I done? Could I have been more stupid? Please, Buddha, please let me have another chance, please. Ugh. Okay. I think we need the fire truck to arrive. So let's do that. And we need the phone to not fall into the gutter. So I think we need to move. My cell phone rang. I walked over there. Let's try that. I tried to talk some sense into him. I told him that one could always earn back the money. He said he still had his wife's full support, so he shouldn't give up just yet. I even tried asking him if he would like some salt bip for dinner. But none of the techniques I had learned from the academy worked. The standoff kept going. The wife was clearly physically exhausted, and she looked like she was mentally drained too. Honey, if you really want to die so much, let me go with you then. I hope we can both be happy in our next lives. Nice. She grabbed the knife on her neck and cut her own throat open. Blood was gushing out. Then she collapsed on the ground that had been covered red by her own blood. The man's face was covered with blood. He seemed to have lost the ability to talk. He slowly knelt down and took the knife out of the woman's hands. It looked like he had completely lost his mind. I couldn't let it happen a second time. I sprinted ahead a few steps and kicked the knife out of his hand. I pinned the man down on the ground. He looked at his wife's body, which was only half a meter away and was slowly losing its warmth. Then he wept. Neither of us had expected the situation to turn out like this. I was suspended due to the serious consequences caused by my reckless, unauthorized actions. Someone quickly ran past me and bumped into my arm. My phone was knocked out of my hand. It stopped at another man's feet. The fire truck hasn't arrived yet. However, this man in a black trench coat seemed to have summoned a lot of people to help put out the fire. He picked up my phone with his left hand. It was ringing with a joyful ringtone, and a little cartoon lamb was dancing happily on the screen. The man tossed my phone back to me, and I lost myself in the melody of the little lamb Billy. It was Elisa's favorite song, and she used to sing it to me all the time, but I didn't realize I had forgotten to answer the phone until it stopped ringing. I called back, and it was Aunt Bentia. She was calling from a convenience store in Costapec, and she wanted to check if I had any news about my sister. She told me to let her know as soon as I found her. Besides Alicia, Auntie Betita really was the kindest person I have ever met. Once I got a real job and became rich, I promised I would take care of her and the orphanage. I left the crowd and walked to the next street, asking the pedestrians about Alicia. Well, that went terribly, so let's see. What if I just do everything on Carlos's side? Oh, well, that did not change Chang's. Awesome. It was total chaos in front of the burning building. Fire trucks, firemen, fire hoses. The fire department had taken charge of the situation. I walked up to a fireman nearby and was about to ask if there was anything I could do to help, but before I opened my mouth, another fireman quickly ran past me and knocked the phone out of my hand. And another one behind him immediately stepped on the phone. The screen cracked into pieces. No! The fireman next to me picked up the phone for me. A foreigner, you really shouldn't stay here. If we don't put out the fire today, we will be dying 1,000 deaths. Take your phone and get out of here. Whoops. Okay. What if I did this? Cell phone on this side and fire truck still on that. The phone kept ringing. Who would be calling me at this godforsaken moment? I was about to bend over and pick it up. The man suddenly got riled up. He waved the knife at me wildly. Don't move, don't answer the phone. His wife saw the chance as the knife had left her neck, so she bit his left wrist as hard as she could. He dropped the knife out of pain. Then she ran over and hid behind me before he could pick it back up. The man suddenly began wailing like a child. Sue, even you are abandoning me? Fine, I'll go by myself. He raised the knife and cut his own throat open. I didn't even have enough time to react. I was suspended due to the serious consequences of my reckless actions. It was totally chaos. The fire trucks, blah. I walked up to the fireman nearby and asked if there was anything I could do to help. A foreigner, he asked as he looked at me. You really shouldn't be here. If we don't put out the fire today, we will be dying 1,000 deaths. He saw my confused look and added, You are new here. This is the headquarters of the Black Dragon Gang, the most powerful gang in the area. Yes, gang, bad people. There are gangs in your country, right? So stay away from here. Leave. Just go get some soda or something. Okay, well, I'm just gonna look up what the answer is. Okay, so it is, I walked over there and my, retry. I walked over there, my cell phone fell to the ground. And then my phone suddenly rang, and then fire truck must go over here. Wait, no. I walked over there, my cell phone fell to... Let's try this. Who is calling me? I turned around and answered the phone quietly. It was from the station. They told me something important had happened to the unit, and I must get back as soon as possible and wait further instructions. I hung up the phone and turned around only to realize the couple had disappeared from the ledge. Fortunately, the fire department had set up a cushion below. You moron, do you know how big of a mess you've made? The case wasn't even under our jurisdiction. Back at the station, Lieutenant King was outraged. He was yelling at me so loudly that the entire building could hear him. The hospital later called and informed us the couple was okay. However, the wife had been 4 months pregnant and they couldn't save the baby. I was suspended due to the serious consequences of my reckless, unauthorized actions. Someone quickly ran past me and bumped into my arm. My phone was knocked out of my hand and stepped on by another man's foot. The fire trucks haven't arrived yet. However, this man in a black trench coat seemed to have summoned a lot of people to put out the fire. He picked up my phone with his left hand and saw my sister's picture. Then he asked me in English what my relationship was with her. There was no expression on his face the entire time. After hearing my explanation, he tossed the phone back to me. Then he said, "Come back here tomorrow. You know my sister?" I walked up to him in excitement. Then a huge man in a black suit stopped me. The man in the trench coat looked like he wasn't going to answer any of my questions, and turned his attention back to his man and the fire. The suit guy seemed like he was twice my size. He looked down upon me and I could see a deep scar on his face. Fine, I would come back tomorrow. Still, I never thought I would find a clue about Alicia just like this. The Lord must be blessing us. Sister, we would soon meet again, I just know it. I can't seem to get it to work no matter how hard I try. Am I stupid? It's not your fault. Some things seem to be tied over there with King. Once you solve the problem over there, it might impact this one too. Huh? Is that a thing too? Occasionally, we might not be able to solve the current case because of something happening somewhere else. Whenever this occurs, you will see orange text in the letters. The appearance of orange text typically means you will need to consult another letter to handle the current one. So basically, if I see orange text in a letter, I should go and check on some other letters first, right? Correct. Sometimes you might need to handle other letters first. Other times, it might just mean that you need to look for clues in other letters. In either case, it really depends on the letters, and you will have to use your own judgment. This doesn't happen too often, but if you do encounter them, make sure you take advantage of the hints in the letter to help you. Got it. I'll go ahead and read the letter from King first. You might have already noticed that every time you open a letter, you can see a number of small colored squares here. Oh yes, what are those? The small squares are the ones of 3 colors, yellow, pink, and gray. Some of them are solid and some of them are empty. These squares represent all the possible endings of the events described in specific letters. The solid ones stand for the endings that you have discovered, while the empty ones are the ones you have yet to reach. Of the solid squares, yellow ones marked the selected ending that you have chosen at the moment, which means the yellow square could only be solid and never empty. The solid pink squares, on the other hand, represents the endings you have discovered but are not selected at the moment. The pink empty squares are the endings you have not discovered yet. All of the squares are strictly arranged in order S, A, B, C, D, E, F, X, which can be a helpful reference when you are making your decision. What about the gray squares? Gray squares may be either solid or empty, but they are less common. Sometimes the development of certain events may be impacted by other people and things. For instance, this incident with Chang was affected by the incident on King's side. That's why there is a gray square here. A gray square means that under current conditions, the possibility of this potential ending happening is 0, or in layman's terms, it cannot happen. Once we solve the related pending problem, the square will no longer be gray, meaning that it is now possible for us to reach that ending. Meanwhile, a previous ending that we have reached will now turn gray instead. Confused. I understand it is very confusing when I explain it to you like this. However, I believe once you are done with Chang's story, you will figure it out how it works. Got it. I'll give it a shot. Okay, so we have Alicia, and I think we have Kung's now. So, okay. We'll work on Lee's and Jimmy's. I'm Lee, a senior in high school. Today, the new art teacher assigned me as his assistant for the class. So, I had to stay after class and clean up the art classroom. I tried to sneak a few peeks at the strange teacher while I was reluctantly mopping the floor. He was looking over the sketches that have been left in the room one by one and then throwing them in the trash. It was just the two of us in the room. Neither of us was talking. "Hey, W, how was your first day?" It was my Omru teacher, Miss Yang, who burst into the room and broke the silence. She said hello to me and held onto Mr. Wang's arm like a little girl. According to what I heard from Jing, Mr. Wang and Miss Yang went way back. It was also Miss Yang who recommended Mr. Wan for the newly vacant teaching position. The beautiful Miss Yang was said to be notoriously hard to get. Many male teachers in the school had allegedly been turned down by her. Was she involved with Mr. Wan? I grabbed the trash can and deliberately left the room. When I got back, there was no one there anymore. Someone appeared to have already replaced the barrel for the water dispenser too. It seemed like I could finally go home. Yay. It was starting to get dark when I finally finished cleaning the classroom. I walked out of the school gate and I noticed that Mr. Wan was walking not too far in front of me, going in the same direction. That was strange. I thought he left a while ago. I didn't want to talk to him, so I stayed behind at a distance, quietly watching his back. Such a bad temper and terribly dressed man. How exactly did he become a teacher again? Before I knew it, Mr. Wan had walked into the dark alley that led to my place. However, as soon as I stepped into the alley myself, I suddenly felt that something was wrong. I immediately backed out. Mr. Wan had been stopped by two men, one in front of him, the other behind him. The one facing my direction was wearing a tank top. He flashed a pocket knife at Mr. Wan's face. I hid behind the corner and tried to peek around it. Mr. Wan took out his wallet and handed it over without any resistance. That was smart, I thought. Better safe than sorry. The tank top man fiddled with the wallet for a while, then slammed it on the ground. 20. Do you think I'm a beggar? He punched Mr. Wan in the face. Mr. Wan stumbled back and bumped into the guy behind him. He was still not resisting. The tank top guy placed his knife on Mr. Wan's face. Be smart, give me all your money. Judging from the look on his face, maybe the 20 yuan really was all Mr. Wan had. We were too far away from the main street and there was no one else around who could help. I suddenly had an idea. I took my racket out of my bag and grabbed a tennis ball. This was the time to test the results of my nightly practices. Ball toss, back swing, please hit the target, please. The ball flew. The ball was flying at a speed of 180 kilometers an hour. A gust of wind suddenly swept by. The ball was flown off its path by the wind, and it missed the target. Instead, it hit the back of Mr. Wan's head. Mr. Wan fell down to the ground with a thud like a brick. The two men noticed me, and they suddenly seemed just as shocked as me. They must have thought I wanted to kill the man laying on the ground for some reason. The tank top guy took one step towards me. I began to picture how they would force me into the corner, pull out a chainsaw out from behind them, and cut me to pieces. She has a whole thing about chainsaws, which is so weird. Like, the dude's already holding a knife. Why would he pull out a chainsaw instead? Oh no, I couldn't stay here any longer. I'm sorry, Mr. Wan. I screamed silently in my head and ran away with my hands covering my face, leaving Mr. Wan there by himself. The next day, Mr. Wan did not come to class. The school put out an announcement saying that he had been badly injured during a robbery and that he was in a coma at the hospital. The announcement also reminded the students to be careful on their way back home. It was all my fault. I should not have left him alone. There must have been a better way. My name is Jimmy. I'm a transfer student. I arrived in Beijing not too long ago, and now I'm a senior. The reason I chose the school was because I had a serious crush on a girl here. Just a few days ago, I was fortunate enough to be her partner in a doubles tennis match on my first day at the school. At first, I was so thankful I thought that the goddess had finally smiled upon me. Yet I was totally embarrassed because I had never even played tennis before. After that happened, I made up my mind. I was determined to improve my tennis skills just in case I had another chance like this. I adjusted the serve speed of the ball machine, walked back to the baseline, raised my racket, and got ready. In order to get better, I bought a season membership at a club. I even finished watching all 178 episodes of the King of Tennis anime. I had complete faith in myself. I believed I could make it work this time. Next time I get to play with her, I would show off my kick serve, my pickup volleys, my drive D, and even my zero style slice to her. And she would look at me with admiration. Haha. The ball machine shot the ball out with a pong. The ball was flying at 140 kilometers an hour. What a sneaky machine. How dare it serve the ball when I wasn't paying attention. Oh gosh, my wrist really hurts. The doctor said that I had hurt my tendon. I needed to rest my right hand for at least a month. He said I should not use a mouse, not to mention playing tennis. No, doctor, I want to play. My dear goddess of fortune, if you could hear me, please heal my wrist. If it's necessary, I will even swear off video games for a month as a sacrifice to you, please. This one should be easy. In these two letters, there are some special restrictions. Yes, remember when I told you that the white pieces can be moved anywhere except past the first and last black piece in the letter, of course? Yes, I do remember. When special restrictions are in place, there will no longer be the case. For instance, in these two letters, the two pieces 140 kilometers an hour and 180 kilometers an hour are in conflict of each other. That means they cannot be moved to the same side. If you try to do so, they will automatically switch places with each other. Both pieces are labeled with the double-headed arrow, which stands for conflict. In addition to conflict, there are other special restrictions, such as sequence. We'll deal with that when we see it. For now, you just need to remember that all the pieces with special restrictions will be labeled with a red sign like this on the right side. Okay, I'll keep an eye out for it. We just need the gusts to pull the ball away. I shuddered a little. Before I realized it, the ball was already right in front of me. I was so startled that I had to awkwardly block the ball with the racket, and I accidentally hit the sweet spot. It actually felt really great. Wait, had I just hit it? Yes, I had. I had just hit an underspin shot. Oh wow, I had learned how to hit a underspin shot. Banzai? Banzai? I jumped up and down with excitement. People nearby were shooting me admiring, strange looks. What does banzai mean? Is he hurt? No, banzai is a Japanese phrase. It means hooray. Although, based on my observations, lots of people outside of Japan use this word as well. They are from many different countries, and most of them are men. Oh, and they share another common characteristic was that they are all single. Single? What's wrong with being single? Single? Everything. Being single hurts. In the end, banzai still means hurt, right? See? Banzai means being single, and being single means it hurts. That's very straightforward. I think I'm single too. Banzai. The ball hit the forehead of the tank top guy exactly as I planned. He fell to the ground with a thud like a brick. Before the second man realized what had happened, I sprinted towards his back as fast as I could. I smashed his head with my racket with all my strength. Then I grabbed Mr. Wan's hand and ran towards the end of the alley. 10 minutes later, I was panting heavily, and I realized I had already run all the way back to my apartment building. Oh, and I was still holding Mr. Wan's hand. Mr. Wan, excuse me, this is where I live. I quickly let go of his hand. Well, I might as well do a home visit then, shall we? Home visit for a senior by an art teacher. Mr. Wan, actually, there is no one else home. I walked in front of him and explained. Do your parents always work late? Mr. Wan looked up at me while climbing the stairs. The sunlight came through the windows in the hallway was making him squint. No, I live alone. I stopped in front of room 413. Mr. Wan didn't follow me. He stopped in front of room 414. He pointed to the door next to him with a thumb and smiled. I suddenly remembered. The first day after I moved in, the manager, Miss Uncle Son, had told me that a very famous artist from abroad had been living in the apartment next door, so that was him. We had actually met each other before. There we go. Okay. So we need to do these two next. Before I do that, give me a sec. Let's start with Alicia. Start, please. Thank you. My name is Alicia. I'm 18 years old. I was born and raised in Mexico. I have a little brother named Carlos, who is 9 years younger than me. He is the only family I have left. We're both orphans. The orphanage was so poor that they couldn't afford to send us to school. I had to come out and make some money so that I could keep my brother in school. If I could make enough money, I thought that maybe we could eventually move out of the orphanage and start a new life, just the two of us. I heard that America was a place full of chances for everyone. That was where I should go. A travel agency inside Mexico City had told me that crossing the desert, stowing away on a train, or getting across the Rio Bravo were all very risky and dangerous. Therefore, they had established a route via the ocean. Even though it would be slightly more expensive, it was guaranteed to be safe, and everyone who had taken this route had got into America. I spent the money I had saved for months and bought myself a ship ticket. There were several other young girls with me on the ship. We were locked inside a small room and were not allowed to get out. At first, we thought this was just so that people wouldn't find us being smuggled across the border, but it had taken so long, we must have arrived by now. Half a month has passed and we were still at sea. We were finally certain that we had been conned. After about a month, the ship finally arrived at port. We were then moved to a building near the port where the guards watched us. Where were we now? Which city was this? Which country was this? Were we going to be sold as slaves or prostitutes? I crouched in the corner with my mind running wild. Every once in a while, a guard would come in and take a sobbing girl out. There were fewer and fewer people left in the room. Finally, there was only me and one other girl named Julia left. Julia suddenly stood up and tried to hit the guard at the door facing us. She was holding a rock in her hand, but she didn't succeed. The rock fell to the ground, and her arm was grabbed so tightly by the guard that it looked like it was about to snap. She looked at me with a panicking look in her eyes. I really wanted to help her. I didn't want to be sold either. I was too scared. The guard had a gun. Everyone outside had a gun. Julia lowered her head. When she lifted it back up, the guard was screaming like a pig being slaughtered. Half of his missing ear was in Julia's mouth. When I heard a few gunshots along with loud cursing, Julia fell to the ground and stopped moving. Her eyes were wide. Her eyes were open so wide as if she was coming out of a nightmare. The injured guard slammed the door angrily with one hand covering his ear. Soon another person came in. This one seemed to be nicer. He had half a bottle of beer with him. He sat down at the door, looked at me, and then looked at Julia, who was lying in her own blood. He didn't seem to care about what had happened at all. An hour later, his bottle was empty, and he had fallen asleep in the chair. It was pretty late. Maybe I wouldn't be taken until tomorrow. I looked at Julia again and remembered what she told me there on the ocean. I want to become a singer in America. I want to be a star. She wasn't bragging. She had a really beautiful voice. She also said, if I do my best, my dream will come true. I would never forget the look on her face when she said it. Her eyes have been filled with hope and anticipation for the future. I was very jealous of how lively and full of joy Julia was. The guard turned a little in his chair and his gun dropped from his waist, sliding towards my feet. Was it a hint from the Lord? I reached out for the gun, but I jerked my hand back like I had been shocked when I touched it. No, I couldn't. What if I end up like Julia? I held the cross tight in front of my chest and started praying. Oh, Heavenly Father, Jesus said, ask and you shall receive. I trust that you know what our true needs are. You recognize what our true feelings are. You understand what situation we are in. Now we shall ask for what our heart truly desires. O God, give heed to my prayer. Show us your mercy. Amen. 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes passed, 30 minutes passed. The guard began snoring. The gun was right next to my hand. Maybe this really was a hint from the Lord. I finally picked up the gun in hesitation. It felt so heavy in my hand. Mom, Dad, please bless me. Carlos, please bless me. Heavenly Father, please bless me. I pushed the door open. There was no one in the hallway outside. It was so quiet. The only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat wildly in my chest. The building was only one floor. After taking one turn, I could see the main gate. There were several guards at the gate, too. All of them had guns. There was a black man and 2 Asian. The rest of them all had pale skin. How could I get out with just one handgun? I checked the gun in my hand once again. There were no bullets in the gun. There were no bullets. I collapsed on the floor. I was not feeling afraid anymore. I just felt utter desperation. Soon the guards noticed me and dragged me back to the room. This time they cuffed up my feet so I wouldn't be able to escape again. Julia's body was still lying there. Flies began hovering around her face, but they didn't seem to have any intention of cleaning up the scene. Would I end up like Julia? Was this my final destiny? Heavenly Father, please answer me. My name is Khan. I am a cop. I am losing my voice. We might do this letter and finish, because God, my voice keeps going. I have been doing this for 7 years, or is it 8? I can't really remember. Today, the old man assigned another newbie to my unit. I had always wanted my unit to become as big as Unit 1. Why did I need so many people? Oh, he always wanted. Detective work wasn't like street fighting. I had a headache whenever I pictured the image of so many people in the unit passing their lunches over their heads during lunch break. And the Snoopy today was full of that kind of fighting for justice crap. Lunatic. Well, screw it, whatever. I was just going to wait for a few days. Then I would find an excuse to send him over to Unit 1. Everybody would be happy then. We were always very busy. The files from the open cases had been stacking up on desks, starting to resemble small hills. Among all the police precincts in the entire Republic of Korea, Busan might be one of the top 5 busiest precincts thanks to the violent gangs in the area. The Musan gang and the Bangmum gang. These 2 gangs never made our lives easy. Recently, the old boss of the Musan gang had been seriously ill. His underlings were itching to become the successor. There were at least a dozen people killed in the infighting every day. If I keep saving up my vacation days like this, I would probably have enough time to plan for my next trip to be to the moon. The case today was an anonymous one too. There was a hostage case, but the kidnapper and the hostages belonged to the same gang. It was a so-called family matter. What was worse was that the kidnapper was someone quite important in the Muzang gang. The old man always told us to keep things easy as so to avoid a direct confrontation with the gangs. He told me again today multiple times to bring the kidnapper in without hurting anyone. Without hurting anyone? Pfft. If he had really wanted that, he would have not assigned the case to me. I was crawling in a narrow air vent duct. I could hear breathing sounds all around me, both loud and quiet, as well as the sounds of the fan. The air smelled disgusting. I loosened my collar a little. I'd rather climb up from the outside of the building with my bare hands than suffocate inside this goddamn tube. Why couldn't I just walk in front of the door and pop 2 shots in his head? I had finally arrived at the top of the room. The voices coming from below sounded very weird through the vent. You stay there and don't move. All of you, don't move. The target was sitting on a couch on the other end of the room. He kept waving the gun in his hand around and pointed it at all the others' heads every once in a while. These poor bastards were all his underlings. None of them even dared to look up. I had seen lots of junkies that would get so high that they wouldn't recognize their own mother. Still, the scene below me was so unusually funny that I almost chuckled. The area below the vent was right in the view of the bay window. Anyone could easily see inside the room from across the street through the window. My task today was to lure him over. I got closer to the vent, trying to observe the situation more closely. Clang, a loud noise came from somewhere. Don't move, I heard the man's voice. A bullet flew out without me seeing it. The nails fastening the vent registered had been shattered by the bullet, and it bounced off a few meters away from into a corner. After a tumble and a half, I fell and smashed into the white carpet along with the vent register. 5 meters away, the junkie was holding his gun with a shocked expression on his face, and smoke was still coming out from the dark, shaking barrel. Near my shoulder, my shirt was turning from its original red into another kind of red, and the color patch kept getting larger. You're letting yourself get hurt, idiot. A voice that I couldn't be more familiar with appeared in my head once again, while also sounding like it was coming from out of this world. Oh crap. I had come back to this room again. The room was extremely dark. There was no furniture inside except for a light bulb hanging from the center of the ceiling. A slightly shorter person walked out from a dark corner reluctantly. His hair was all messed up and his eyes didn't even look alive. As soon as he pushed me away from underneath the light, a mysterious force dragged me into the corner. I was swallowed by the darkness. Whenever I was in danger, the sky would come out against my will, but at a moment like this, well, what a day. Whoever stood under the light would have control of the body. From this moment on, I was no longer in command of my own body. I managed to dodge all the flying bullets coming towards me with extreme agility and inhuman postures. When I got back to my feet, I somehow had a gun in my hand. The 13 9mm bullet in the magazine was fired like a machine gun. Each one of them went through his head. Broken eyeballs splashed all over the barely recognizable face of the junkie. Everything was a terrible mess. The junkie had collapsed to the floor like a pile of mud, but now the gun was aimed at his henchmen that were still all tied up. Things were taking an ugly turn. One bullet, one life, no waste. But I hesitated when the gun pointed at a muscular man with a tattooed head. The muscular man suddenly swept me at my ankle with his leg. I lost my balance, knocked my head on a short table, and passed out. When I woke up, I was lying in the hospital with tubes coming out all over my body. Mingjun was sitting next to me, sound asleep. 8 deaths. As per usual, I had to write 1,000 words for each death in the report, which meant I needed to write 8,000 words. Moreover, the target this time was not just a regular punk. His father was the leader of the Gangmun group within the Muzung group. Chow? That would mean another 4,000 words at least. Gosh, my head hurts so bad. Sweet Jesus, give me a break, please. Wow, it's almost like watching an action movie. If only I had some popcorn. Don't ruin the solemn mood by suddenly thinking about popcorn. Okay, sorry, there is no popcorn here, but we do have Osmanthus cakes. Oh, that's great too. I'm not very picky. So, if I want to eat cake while watching a movie, while working, is there any way I could do it hands-free? These letters are not like the regular letters that I can just read in front of me. I have to follow the thoughts of the writer by confirming it sentence by sentence. Stupid lazy girl. Although there is indeed a way. If you want to free your hands to eat and do something else, all you need to do is hit A. Then the letters will enter autoplay mode. Furthermore, if you want to read it faster while you are not eating, you can activate the skip text option in the options afterwards. Every button press will reveal an entire line of text immediately. All of these tips have been archived inside the help menu, which will be periodically updated as we go along. If you have any questions, don't forget to check the information there. Got it. Okay. Okay, so she needs the bullets and he needs no bullets. Okay. The nails fastening the vent register had been shattered by the bullet, but it bounced off a few meters into a corner. After a tumble and a half, I fell and smashed this was serious. I dropped my gun and held my hands behind my head. I did as he said and sat together with the other hostages. I was going to owe Unit 3 another big favor. Whoops. A bullet had come from the door, hit me in the stomach. I slowly collapsed to the ground with my back against the wall. I could feel the warmth slowly leaving my body. The last thing I saw was some people arguing at the door. They were all strangers. Tears rolled down my face. It was true what they said. The people you wanted to see most in your last moments would be your own family. Whoops. Okay. So how about you don't move? I suddenly knocked down a ladder that had been put against the wall. The guard in the room woke up. He stumbled into the hallway, still quite sleepy. I suddenly had an idea. Hands up, don't make a sound or I'll shoot. I pointed the gun at his head. He held up his hands high and began sweating. Walk to the gate slowly. Don't speak to them. Don't lower your hands. Do not turn around. I pressed the gun against the back of his head and we walked slowly towards the gate. My palms were completely wet with sweat. Only I knew that I was more nervous than him. When we were only a few hundred meters away from the port, I smashed his head with the gun as hard as I could and knocked him out. And then I ran away as fast as possible. I didn't dare look back. There were still plenty of people on the street. Many stores were still open even in the middle of the night. People were shooting me strange looks as I ran past them. They all seemed to be Asians, but I didn't dare stop and talk to them. Julia had been right about one thing. Dreams do come true when you do your best. I didn't know how long I had run, but I couldn't even take one more step. I collapsed into a bunch of paper boxes stacked in the corner of an alley. The bullet hit the vent register. Then it happened to deflect and hit my shoulder. What a wonderful day for me. Blood was streaming down my arm and dripped into the vent. Then it dropped onto the carpet of the room below. Wait, what is that? The target steps were getting closer. Then he stopped. I didn't need to look. The bastard must be standing right beneath the vent. Soon he will lift his head up and notice me. There was a sound of window glass shattering, then it was the sound of flesh being destroyed. Mission complete. Everything went as planned. Well, almost. I stood next to the junkie's body, which was missing half of his head. Oh, he was supposed to just lose a leg or something. This was a little different from what the old man had demanded. Ming Jun had just rushed out from the building across the street. He dropped to his knees with a thud as soon as he saw me. Sorry, Lieutenant. That was my mistake. I missed. It looked like he hadn't forgotten the last time when he did not follow the plan exactly and had to write a 200,000 word report. Sigh. If apologies were good enough, then what would we need the cops for then? I checked the junkie's pocket. There was only 50,000 won and half a packet of Malibus. I stuffed the money into Ming Jun's pocket and lit a cigarette for myself. Well, Chow, which was the name of the junkie, was just trash in this society and he deserved to die. After witnessing such a bloody end, maybe his loser buddies will learn to behave a little too. Yeah, maybe it wasn't too bad after all. I touched Ming Yun's head. Don't worry about it. Well done. You have solved King's problem, but don't forget about Chang's letter from earlier. Oh right, almost slipped my mind. There is one more thing that could help with your work. That's history. History. That sounds like something I could use to review all of the endings I have unlocked, right? Smart girl. Every ending you have come across is archived here. When you run into something that's too complicated, try referring to the history for inspiration. Okay. Oh, one more thing. I have another small tip regarding the history archive. In here, we can browse all the possible endings to a letter. They are displayed on the right. Furthermore, they are arranged in the same order as the small squares, so that you can see the squares you see when you open a letter. They are arranged in this order: S, A, B, C, D, E, F, X. The ending with one small I is the one you are currently viewing. I see. I think this could help with my deduction too when the number of endings increase. Exactly. As for now, you want to use it. As for how you want to use it, that's solely up to you. Okay. So I want this one here, and cell phone fell to the ground. I need the cell phone to ring and then the fire trucks, I'm pretty sure. Who would call me at this godforsaken moment? I turned around and answered the phone quietly. It was Lieutenant Kang. Lieutenant briefly asked me about the situation and told me to hand the phone over to the husband. It was the Bing Mung Gang. What? Is it true? Oh my, that's wonderful. Thank you. He hung up the phone, dropped the knife, and hugged his wife, sobbing uncontrollably. Sue, it's all okay now. We can have our lives back. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. It was all my fault. What just happened? I took my phone back from the man, confused. A strange gust of wind blew past us and the man lost his balance. I quickly reacted, took a big step forward and grabbed him, trying to pull him back. But I was pulled over instead. We fell off the ledge together. The world was spinning. It was 10 floors off the ground. No one would survive if we hit the ground. I swung my right arm out as hard as I could towards the roof's edge. Something flew out of my coat. It was a white ribbon I have wrapped around my forearm with a small spearhead tied to its end. The spearhead wrapped around the metal bar on the ledge a few times and tightened the ribbon. It was my secret weapon. I call it my tail. For a moment, I let out a sigh of relief, thinking we were safe, but the bar couldn't hold our weight and began to bend. I tightened my left fist and grabbed the man's shirt harder. I burned the last drop of energy inside of me with all of the adrenaline I had, and forced every single muscle cell to release all of their power. Justice was not something that I only talked about. I threw him up towards the roof. We were quickly moved away from each other in opposite directions. The metal bar finally gave out and it was torn away from the concrete on the ledge. I began to fall with it. I could hear the wind rushing in my ears. This is my justice. And now we have new letters. Okay. I am going to call it here. Besides my voice going, I am kind of tired. So we're gonna call it here. Work on Jimmy and Carlos next week. And hopefully we get some new letters soon. But thank you for everyone who joined. I will see you all next week. Bye.